Welcome to another IEA Reporter podcast. I'm Dave Harbison, Communications Director of the IEA, and today our guest is Idaho's Teacher of the Year for 2020, IEA member Stacie Lawler. Stacie is a physical education teacher at Timberlake Junior High School in the Lakeland School District in North Idaho. She's in her 13th year of teaching and has been active in coaching throughout her career in education as well. One of her passions has been raising awareness regarding the mental and emotional health of students and finding ways to help students build self-esteem and cope with the extreme stress of being a teenager in today's society. Let's start there, Stacie. You were brought down to Boise by Governor Little for his State of the State address because of your advocacy around students' mental and emotional health. How did that come about, and what was that experience like?
Honestly, just to be brought down is very humbling. I think about, I'm just a little PE and health teacher from North Idaho. To be down here is pretty overwhelming. As far as like being down here, I just think it's amazing that Governor Little really has this as his main focus, because obviously this has been a passion of mine in an area that I see kids struggling with. So I feel incredibly honored to be down here because I feel like I can be a voice for what's happening in the trenches at our school.
And we here at the IEA have been hearing from our members for months, if not years now, about the increase in students struggling with mental and emotional health issues, as well as with related disruptive behaviors by students. What does your firsthand experience in the classroom and working with these students tell you about all this?
It tells me that we are in a crisis right now. I think that we would like to pretend like everything's going well, but it's not. I mean, I see kids on a daily basis who are struggling with anxiety or depression, and I would say once a week we at least are making phone calls to parents, letting them know what we are seeing at school. So we definitely are in a crisis mode with what I have seen in my health class as well as my PE classes.
It seems like maybe that the help comes in two different categories: preventative and in the moment kind of help for the students. What can we do to build self-esteem in our students and kind of head off the problems maybe before they occur?
Well, I know that obviously education is the key right here, making sure that they get a good comprehensive social and emotional wellness curriculum. So we do that in health as well. But really, Sources of Strength is a great program that we have started. We're in our second year at Timberlake, and that really is a preventative, science-based curriculum that is really trying to give kids the power to know, to be able to recognize the signs of depression or anxiety or other mental health problems and be able to kind of deal with it before it gets into crisis mode. So for me, that preventative piece is huge. And then, of course, when we're in a crisis mode, I have found right now in our school systems we are ill-equipped to deal with the crisis. I know for our own building, our counselor is only there part-time. So very often when we are in the middle of a crisis, we don't actually have a counselor in our building, and then we have to get somebody to be able to come help us. So I know for me, that is a huge factor, is not being able to have somebody there to help us when we're in the middle of a crisis, because most of us aren't trained. We don't know what to do.
We'll dig a little deeper on that in a minute, but I'm glad you brought up the Sources of Strength program. You've done some videos for the State Department of Education really touting that program. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe how it's structured or what the pillars are of it?
Okay. Well, this is only our second year, so I don't say I'm an expert at all, but I firmly believe in the program. So it's got your 8 little pieces of the Sources of Strength wheel, and the concept behind it, and there's things like physical activity, medical access. There's 8 different pillars, and the idea is that you want to be able to have as many pieces as you can in the time of crisis, and even honestly not in the time of crisis, to be able to catch you. The concept behind it is, if there's only one piece of that puzzle that you have, so let's say physical activity, you've got lots of physical activity and that's something that's your source. If you've only got one of those things in a time of crisis, that one piece is not going to be able to catch you. So being able to make sure that you've got your generosity, which is another piece of the wheel, that you've got your medical access, your mental health care that you are able to access, those kind of things kind of complete the circle. I know for myself, when my daughter came home from college last year, she was struggling with, some anxiety and just not feeling right. And I went through the wheel with her, and it was very powerful because it was obvious Keely she had one of the pieces of the wheel. And so for me to be able to look at my own kids' experience and go, okay, you've only got one piece right now. what can we add to? Okay, so let's work on generosity that you have control over. And I think that's the reason I like the program so much, because it puts kids back in the power. They have the ability to know what to do instead of just being like, I'm clueless, I'm not sure what I can do. Well, hey, let's look at, can we help you with your healthy activities, which is why PE is a perfect segue into mental health, because we need more physical education. We need kids to be more active. So for my daughter, it was interesting to be able to look back as an educator. I've been teaching this to kids, but then to look at my 19-year-old and go, wow, I understand now why you're struggling. Let's see if we've got some real steps that we can take to make you feel better. And it did. It worked.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because you come to this work through a lot of personal experiences, both as an educator with your mother having been a teacher in Salmon, Idaho, and then on this piece of it, the mental and emotional health piece, both your son and your daughter had some struggles in that area that really opened your eyes.
Absolutely. I know exactly the moment that put me sitting in this chair right now. It happened in October 2014, and my son called me, and I feel very fortunate because I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones, because my son told me. He said, Mom, I want to kill myself. It was an awful conversation to have, but the fact that he was brave enough to kind of own up to how he'd been feeling, because he'd been struggling for a while, it was amazing. So for me, that kind of started everything, because everything I had learned about mental health was all just by book. I was like, I'd never really been around anybody who had talked about suicide. I'd never really dealt with depression or anxiety with any of my family members before. So for me, that was kind of the moment where my career path, it stayed the same because I was still a PE and health teacher, but my focus completely changed.
We're visiting with Stacie Lawler, IEA member from the Lakeland School District, and the 2020 Idaho Teacher of the Year. Now, the governor's K-12 task force has made addressing mental health and emotional trauma one of its core recommendations, but without buy-in from the legislature and follow-through from state agencies, the Idaho students still may not get the help that they need. What would you say to a legislator who's maybe on the fence about investing in resources and the training necessary to really address this problem?
My first thing is come to a school and visit. Come spend time with us. Be in the trenches. You do not have to take long, especially at a middle school. I think middle school is just a really trying age for kids anyway, because they're really developing who they are as people and trying to figure out a lot of stuff. I guess that's my first thing is come to a school. Yeah. Come witness, the trauma that these kids have. And maybe it's just that they get super anxious and they have a hard time sitting still in class, or they need to get more activity because they are feeling anxious and they feel closed in, so they need to go for a walk. That's what I would encourage, is just come visit our schools, because we are in need. We do not have the resources right now to properly deal with the crisis that happens, and the preventative care as well.
But it's not quite as simple as hiring a bunch more counselors, although that would certainly be a positive step or a great start. We also need more psychiatrists and nurses, and then we need to give them manageable caseloads and resources they need. And then, as you talked about, we can't overlook the classroom teacher. That's really, in many cases, the first line of defense.
Absolutely. You think about who spends the most time with these kids. Yeah, we see it. So being able to give some information to our staff so they don't feel overwhelmed. The QPR training in our school district 2 years ago, everyone, not just teachers, but every staff member in our entire school district got trained, so we would know what to do if we had a kid that came up to us and said, we were feeling like they were showing some of the signs of being suicidal. Because as we know, the big thing is people think you don't want to talk about suicide, because if you talk about it, then that's going to put it in their brain. And we know now that that is not exactly the case. So the QPR training is something that I know in our school district that has helped, because it has given our teachers a little bit more power. So when somebody comes and they feel like a kid is in crisis, they've got some tools to talk to them about it. One of the ladies that did our training, I remember distinctly a story she told me. She said that she had met with a counselor and did some QPR training, and the counselor shared a story. And she said that she was a high school counselor, had a student come in and was concerned about him and asked if he was going to hurt himself, and his response was no. Well, he went home that night and attempted suicide. He did not complete suicide. When he got better, she asked him, she brought him in, and she said, I brought you into my class, in my office, and we talked about, I asked you if you were going to hurt yourself. And you said, I wasn't going to hurt myself. I was going to kill myself. So being able to know what type of language to use, because I think that's important, is being able to actually say those really hard words. Nobody likes to say to anyone, are you going to kill yourself? But we have to be brave enough to do that. And being okay, my whole campaign this year is about being, it's okay to not be okay, being able to kind of break the stigma of mental health, because everybody's got this idea that you're weak if you talk about depression or if you've got anxiety. And we need to fix that. We need to fix that in our schools. We need to fix it in our community.
QPR stands for?
Question, persuade, respond.
And how available is that? Maybe statewide. You have the opportunity to have it in your school, but
I do think it's very available. You know, like I said, I think the main people were out of Spokane, I believe. I probably am wrong on that. But yeah, we were able to get them to come in, and we can also get people who are trained in QPR. It's not a complicated, I mean, maybe it was 3-hour training that we all did, and it's touching the surface. I mean, we've got more work to do, but at least it gives people more confidence in knowing what to do.
What is the, I guess, Cliff Notes version? What's the primary takeaway from that training for you?
Honestly, it's not to freak out. You know, like kids are looking to you, you know, when they're struggling and you ask them that tough question, they look at you like, what are you going to do about it? And how are you going to respond? And by saying stuff like, oh, you don't mean that, or, oh, you're just joking, or, you know, like not giving it validity is hard for kids. So my big takeaway from QPR is just giving people the training to feel confident to have a conversation, because they're hard conversations. And part of the training is you practice, you role model with one of the other teachers, and you practice, like, what would that look like? What would I say? You know, being able to use those words, because they're hard words to use.
You alluded to this earlier as well, that the mental and emotional health issue takes on a lot of different forms: suicide or other kinds of self-harm, depression, bullying, anxiety, disruptive behaviors, just to name a few. How widespread is the problem? And if you have any sense, why do you think we're seeing such a rapid increase in recent years?
I wish I was an expert.
Sure.
But from what I see as a health teacher, somebody that's in the school system, I can't say that it's not social media, because I look at the amount of time that kids spend on the internet. You know, bullying that can happen. You know, when I was a kid, it would happen at school or, you know, in the park. But now, you know, kids can get bullied all of the time. So I have to look at social media and think that's part of the issue. I don't know what else would be a factor. Pressure to succeed in life. I know for my daughter, a lot of her anxiety came from being a perfectionist. So she wanted to be the best basketball player. She wanted to be the highest GPA in the school. So a lot of that is stuff that's self-imposed on kids, I would say, as well. It's just different for kids these days. It's just really different. I think we all like to look back, well, when I was a kid, and we all say that, but kids are having a hard time now. Yeah. Like, I think we need to rethink how we are dealing with them, because it's not the same as when we were kids and we were riding without seatbelts in the back of a truck. You know, like, I mean, life was just different. So I think we need to be able to address that, and I think social media certainly plays a huge factor in that.
Okay. It's a difficult issue, but obviously it's a very important one. So let's close on a more positive note. What did it mean to you and your family when you were recognized as Idaho's Teacher of the Year in that surprise ceremony a few months ago?
Oh my gosh, incredibly humbling. My sister and I were just talking about it yesterday, actually, that whole imposter syndrome that happens, where you feel like at some point they're all going to realize that I really am not worthy of that. That's exactly how I feel right now. I was getting ready to come down here, and I was talking to her. She's actually a counselor, so she helps me a lot. And she was, reminding me, Stacie, this is why you're down there, and you are just who you are, and just be honest. And for me, I think I'm a PE teacher. I teach health in a little tiny school up north. And am I really, I work with these amazing teachers. My husband is a teacher who I look at and I think he's amazing. Some of my best friends are teachers. So I think for me, it was just like the reality that I have kind of an important role to do right now. It played a huge impact on my reaction. I cried a lot. I was very shocked. I had no idea it was coming. So for me, I'm incredibly grateful and humbled by the honor, and I hope I can do something good with my time.
Well, and it's very well timed in the sense that you have some level of expertise and certainly passion and
Passion maybe more than expertise.
for the advocacy regarding mental and emotional health for students, and it comes at a crucial time. So you have the platform now.
I feel it's very convenient for me because all of the things that the governor is talking about is right up my alley. This is what I care about. You know, my focus has really shifted in the last, 2014 was kind of my moment that everything changed for me. And a lot of, my husband always thinks that I look at everybody and think everybody needs a counselor. And part of me does see that. You know, I see kids that are struggling. I thought, well, if everybody had a counselor, you know, we'd have somebody to talk to. So for me, my life has completely changed. And I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with this.
Well, congratulations on being named Teacher of the Year, and thanks for sharing your story.
Well, thank you.